At this place in history, today takes us to St. Albans, right off Main Street in Taylor Park. And this, Steve, is one of the most famous events in Vermont history.
A very famous event in Vermont history. I mean, I think take yourselves back. You know, we're well into the American Civil War. We're hundreds of miles from the nearest fighting in bucolic and beautiful downtown St. Albans. And you have this October afternoon, and Confederate raiders come charging into town, rob banks, burn a bridge, generally create mayhem, and then run back across the Canadian border.
Incredible history here in St. Albans, and the History Museum here in St. Albans is fantastic as well.
Oh, great, yeah, and we're going to go in and we're going to visit the St. Albans History Museum, and they have a raid room, and we're going to talk to some experts about the raid and learn a lot of really cool stuff.
Inside the museum now, this is Jim Murphy. We are in the raid room, and you've got some great stories for us, I'm sure, Jim.
Oh, there's so many stories about what happened during the raid. The man who was shot and killed by one of the raiders, he was a Southern sympathizer. That it was really interesting to find that out after, many years later. But the money that was stolen from the bank say was $208,000 that was stolen, but they'd never been able to prove it. But some of the money is, we have a bill here, which is from the St. Albans Franklin County Bank. And we have on the wall here at the museum a whole about 10, 12, 15 pieces of the raid money, which had been stolen and was returned to a family here in town years ago. And they in turn have given it to the museum. We have it on the wall here in the raid room.
So why did they raid? What did they accomplish?
Well, they were trying to start a commotion up north. What I'm getting to get money to put down south so they could spend it more down there. There was no agreement between Canada and the United States, so it was a perfect place for them to come into the States. But the best story of the whole thing is J. Gregory Smith, who was the governor of the state of Vermont at the time of the raid, was in Montpelier. But when Bennett Young came into town, he went up to the Smith estate because they had a beautiful set of stables for all their horses, and he was looking for the best horses in town, and Mrs. Smith let him in and showed him around the area. That's a story not many people have heard, but that's been told. But the day of the raid, she found out at the raid, and she sat on her front porch with an old revolver.
Now, Steve, you've got the white gloves out, which means you've got something cool to show us.
I do. There are so many fun things in this museum here in St. Albans, but I had to go digging through the Vermont Historical Society collection as well. And we have this cane. And so the story on this cane is that a guy named Theron Webster was walking down the street in St. Albans, and when the gunplay was going on with the raiders coming in, that he narrowly missed being hit. And this cane has a bullet hole, or a bullet actually embedded in it. And this was his walking cane, so given by his great-grandkids to the Vermont Historical Society. So, cool stories, cool objects, that's what we have here.
Absolutely. So the St. Albans Museum is open from Wednesday through Saturday, and you can find them online at stamuseum.org.
That's right, yeah, and totally come check it out. It's an incredible museum, more than just the Civil War, the breadth of history here in St. Albans.
At this place in history.